street after street of rubble, building after building, home after home. Just I'm overwhelmed by a sense of loss in those places. To carry that type of ferocious, indiscriminate attacks into Rafah, 600,000 children. Well, the world has been warned. This is certainly the moment for anyone with a voice, with any influence, to prevent just yet another catastrophe falling upon children here.
A senior official at the US Department for Defense says the aid into Gaza has doubled over the last month. 200 aid trucks arrived into Gaza in March, compared to just 100 in February. We see results, the official said, but we also see the need for significantly more results. The comments were made after the US Defense Secretary met his Israeli counterpart at the Pentagon. Let's find out what it is like in Gaza. James Elder is the Unicef spokesperson there. We can speak to him now. Good morning to you, James.
Asma, hi there. Good morning.
So 200 aid trucks compared to 100. How much of a difference does that make? Has it made?
In the most simple sense, Asma, any aid makes a difference, particularly right now, food and medicines, without a doubt. The level of deprivation I'm seeing when I see mothers in tears over paper-thin babies, anything, if it's getting to them, is a game changer, but it's not enough. And that's critical. The level of need, the level of deprivation that's been forced on people here, Asma, both the destruction of all the life-saving access supplies they would have to water and sanitation, but the severe lack that they've had for such a long time. So it's still not enough. That's why we have imminent famine. That's why you see the scenes that I'm speaking to now.
Obviously you have people all over Gaza, or the parts that are still inhabited. If you had to put you talk about imminent famine, if you had to put a percentage on the number of people who are hungry without adequate food, what would it be? Is it 50%, 80%?
Yeah, it's closer to the second one, Asma. These numbers are there. I'm sorry, I don't have it, but I can say, for example, that for the most vulnerable citizens, for children from up to the age of 0 to 2-year-olds in the north, 1 in 3 of those children are acutely malnourished. Now, before this war, less than 1% of children under the age of 5 were acutely malnourished. Now we have 1 in 3. And the north, and we don't have people in the north, Asma, not the far north. Yes, I was there in a convoy 2 days ago, going through scenes that I've not seen in my career with UNICEF. Entire cities turned to rubble, tens of thousands of people standing on the rubble as you drive through, doing that universal symbol of hand to mouth, showing how hungry they are. There is not nearly enough aid getting to those people, there's no doubt, and that is in an area that is completely cut off from the world. Asma, we get there when we can, when we are allowed to. That's critical, when we're allowed to. Remembering there is an aid access point, there is an old crossing point 15 minutes from this level of desperation. So whilst this is a man-made catastrophe, man-made heartbreak, it can be reversed if the right decisions are made.
We'll come back to the right decisions in a second. So you're saying that it's closer to 80% of people who don't have enough food. We spoke to a spokesperson for the Israeli Prime Minister last week who said the vast majority of people absolutely have enough food in Gaza.
Well, look, there's a classification done on food, the most respected body in the world, that released last Monday, and it showed the fastest decline we've seen in malnutrition. It showed the largest percentage of a population anywhere to receive the most severe rating since that body began reporting 20 years ago. As I say now, 1 in 3 children there in Rafah here, a city of children. I can speak to the desperation. I see it every day. I can speak to the bombardments that I've been hearing overnight. Certainly when I look to the north and I see the people on the streets, when I go to hospitals and I see malnutrition wards that are full, I can absolutely speak to that. You can also just look at the numbers. Gaza used to receive 500 trucks of humanitarian and commercial aid a day. It's received around a third of that in the 6 months of this war. So we have to be clear on this. Truth matters. Life-saving aid matters.
James, how much of the food is stolen by Hamas? Because every time we speak to anyone from the Israeli government and from the IDF, that's one of the first things that they say, that Hamas steal some of, I don't know how much, but some of the aid that comes in on the trucks. Is that true? And how much, if it is true?
Yeah, as a humanitarian, that's very difficult for me to say. I can speak to what I see when I go on missions, when I go, as it was, let's go back even when I was here in November, December, and you go to Gaza City and we distribute to a hospital. And the 70-year-old something woman there, who, by the way, a Christian woman hiding in a chapel in her hospital that had been bombed, we give the aid to her. She knows her community. She has never left her community in her life, literally never left. She does the aid distribution. Yes, 2 days ago when I went to Jabalia in the far north, we go to the primary healthcare centre, we deliver the aid to them. So we are delivering in community structures to people, to doctors, to health workers. This is our work. Now, we work in difficult environments, Somalia, Afghanistan. Here, there is no doubt, but there is also no doubt that the great bulk of food aid, of water, of medicines, of vaccines, of obstetric kits for pregnant women is going to those people who need it, just as there is no doubt they are not getting as much as they do desperately need.
Okay. You talked about the people's suffering could be alleviated if the right decisions were made. What are the right decisions?
Asma, when it comes to aid distribution and preventing imminent famine, stopping the fastest decline we've seen in the nutritional status of a child population, that is about, as I say, additional entry points. This is about roads. Yeah. Of course, anyone in Gaza will take any aid they can get, but we must be sure that to make sure that aid deliveries coming from the air, which is normally when people are hundreds of miles away from a natural disaster, not 5 miles from a crossing, or a boat that comes in with 10 trucks equivalent on, or 12 trucks, we must be sure that they don't become distractions. So what do we need? We need more entry points. And there are entry points, as I say, in the north where you could flood that area very, very quickly. That's one. The other is just remove all obstructions and delays and the hundreds and hundreds of trucks on the other side of the border, get them in, but open other entry routes. And then, Asma, the big one, the great fear for so many people here, for where I am right now, speaking to you, Rafah in the south, a city of children, this conversation that seems to continue on a military offensive here. I've seen the areas where there's been full military offensives. As I say, I've not seen that in my 20 years, street after street of rubble, building after building, home after home. Just, I'm overwhelmed by a sense of loss in those places. To carry that type of ferocious, indiscriminate attacks into Rafah, 600,000 children. Well, the world has been warned. This is certainly the moment for anyone with a voice, with any influence, to prevent just yet another catastrophe falling upon children here.
Well, just finally, then, those entry points you talked about. What is the argument against having more entry points? When you've perhaps pressed the authorities to open other entry points, what have they said about why they don't?
It's a good question. I'm sorry, I'm not privy to it. I know that at the highest level, from all agencies, it's a constant push. Areas in the far north where I talk about 15 minutes from people whose faces I can see are gaunt, from mothers who are holding, mothers who have done everything they can to prevent their children being bombed and now holding paper-thin babies in their arms. 15 minutes away. Kani is another one in Gaza City. These can be used. These have been used in years gone by. We are currently coming from the south and the most dangerous route. That's important to remember too when we hear conversations that as much aid can come in as is needed. Sorry, I'm just hearing more explosions. This is a very dangerous place to deliver aid. One of the most dangerous places. We've seen more aid workers, more UN colleagues killed here than in any war since the United Nations was created. Crazy numbers of journalists killed, lots of people killed trying to access aid. So we must be clear as well about the conditions that the United Nations and many brave partners on the ground are being forced to work in.
James, thank you very much for talking to us. That is James Elder, who's a UNICEF spokesperson in Gaza, giving us an idea really of the proximity of these points, these crossings, these kind of entry points, and also saying that really the airdropping is not the best way of doing things. It does add to a sense of chaos, doesn't it?
It does, and we could see a picture of him. He's in a flak jacket. I mean, he's just said he's in Rafah. He's in harm's way there talking about it. I mean, the point here that we keep coming back to is there needs to be a ceasefire. For there to be a ceasefire, Israel needs to stop dropping bombs, and Hamas needs to give the hostages back. And those two things need to happen. And the problem we keep stumbling against is that neither one of those things seem hugely likely at this point.
But until that happens, why can't they open more entry points?
Yeah, and some of them is coming from Egypt as well. And I think they're worried about the security of entry points going both ways, maybe, is also a problem. And, we did an airdrop, but if that doesn't help, then it doesn't help, does it?